Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, we will discuss about handling certain situations during the interview and also some tips. I think we have been covering a lot of tips in almost each and every lecture, so let's focus more on situation handling as a primary topic in this lecture. So, the first situation that you might run into is questions on a specific topic that are being asked to you for which you do not know the answers. For example, let's say the interviewer asks you about IP addresses. What is an IP address? How do you check an IP address? What are the classes of IP address? By looking at the IP address, can you tell me whether it belongs to class A or class B or class C category of an IP address? Now, if IP address classification is not really a good strength of yours, then you have very limited options but to say no or I do not know the answer to these questions. You can do that as well. But if he's still stressing on that point, you can be honest and tell the interviewer, hey, I'm not really good in IP addresses, or IP addresses is not my strength, but I can definitely take up questions on other networking topics. So at least you are trying to switch the context from a very negative mode, which the interview has gone into, to something positive. So you need to give the best shot at it and request the interviewer to change for the topic. So that's how you can handle this particular situation. Now, the next thing, which is very common nowadays, since the last 1.5 year, ever since the COVID situation started, I have been interviewing candidates online on Zoom and Skype. And network connectivity is something that nobody can assure of. Especially, let's say you're talking to candidates across geography, they are in a different time zone, you do not know how the network connectivity is there. So during the interviews, most of the time I'm not able to hear them, or the video is flaky, or it stucks. So the interview experience is definitely hampered. Even the candidate sometimes drops and then he again joins back the Zoom or the Skype call. So overall, the flow of the interview is broken, and that is definitely going to impact the overall interview experience for both parties. So one thing you can do is request the interviewer whether you can turn the video off, so that it saves the bandwidth and at least he's able to hear you, or you know you are in a position to share the screen and you can see his screen while you're coding. But remember one thing, most of the interviewers are in favor of turning on the video because they really want to see you when you answer these questions. And also, there's a trust factor when you turn on the video. You are the one who is actually answering and joining the organization, and there's no proxy for you sitting there and answering and taking up the interview questions. Right. And the next thing is, if that doesn't work out, if you really have a bad network connectivity, you got dropped 2 3 times, then you can request the interviewer that, hey, can we reschedule the interview to some other time? This has happened with me personally when I have interviewed candidates, and I was totally okay with it. You need to understand that the need is from both sides. You need the job and the organization needs you. So both of them sometimes do agree in these kind of situations. And the best thing to do is to reschedule and have the interview at some later point of time. Next, conflict handling. Now, sometimes the interviewer might deliberately take the discussion into a conflicting situation. For example, you write a particular program, and let's say there are two for loops, nested for loops. Now he's trying to ask you to optimize the code so that you can get rid of one for loop so that the time complexity can be reduced. Now, in your mind, based on how smart you are already thinking, or you already have a pre-notion that this program cannot be written with a single for loop. Two nested for loops are needed. If you tell the interviewer that this nested for loops are needed and I cannot change it to a single for loop, he's going to ask you and insist, let's say, he try to change it to a single for loop. I know it can be done, and I need you to try and solve this particular problem statement. Now, rather than getting into a conflict, you can definitely go ahead and try for it, because getting into a conflict is not going to help you clear the interview. So the best thing you can do here is make an attempt to change the program to a single for loop. It could be that he is right. It could be that what you were thinking was wrong. But rather than getting into a conflict when you are discussing a certain algorithm or certain logic in the code, you need to think whether the points you are telling the interviewer he is agreeing with you or not, or is there any alternate route to solve this particular code. At least go ahead and try and see what the interview is asking you to do. So that's how you can avoid conflicts. Now, the last thing, not really a situation handling, but a tip to everyone. Programming language is never a barrier. Logic is what matters. So you can write your logic in C, Java, Python, .NET. So program is just a syntax, but your logic definitely is not going to change. Let's say binary sorting or checking the length of the string. What is important is the logic, right? Program is just a syntax. Now, why I'm discussing this? Because since last 2 years, I have been recruiting candidates only for Python positions. But 80% of the candidates whom I have interviewed, they didn't knew Python at all. All of them were Java experts or C experts or .NET experts. But I have an understanding that programming language is just a syntax. If the person can write logic, he can definitely pick up Python. So obviously there would be a little bit of learning curve, but you should be able to switch to that particular language very easily. So if in the interview, if a question comes up that hey, you're good at Python, but we want you to work on Java, would you be comfortable? I think the answer to that should be yes, unless you are really a Python freak and you really love Python. But if you, at the same time, you need to think that if you need this first job that desperately, switching to the language is not going to impact you in any way. It is just the syntax that is going to change. Having said that, the last point, which I have been covering right from the beginning of these lectures, attempt and try. Do not give up easily on puzzles, coding at all. It really leaves a very bad impression the moment I ask a particular program to write, and let's say the candidate comes back to me within 30 seconds or 1 minute and says, uh, I do not know how to solve this. What impression does it carry on my mind? Uh, I know at that point of time that I'm going to reject this candidate. He has not even attempted. Coding is a must. Let it be a software developer or a tester, and you're not even attempting the basic code itself and giving up so easily. So always try to attempt the puzzles and the coding problem statement. Spend 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes at least. And we have discussed in the last lecture, if you know the solution, it's fine to take even 15, 20, 25 minutes also to solve the particular problem statement. So that's about situation handling. And this is what I wanted to cover in this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.